Good morning. Welcome to the maiden voyage of ChadGPT. This is a space for good governance, people empowerment, and transformative justice. I'm your host, and today we are weaving the first thread of the Common Dream ChadGPT podcast. The Philippine Commission on Women has given us a powerful charge this year: lead like the Babaylan's Filipinas. But this is not just a slogan, it's a reclamation. For centuries, the colonial yoke of patriarchy tried to bury the image of the Babaylan, who she is, what she represents. They called her wisdom witchcraft, they called her leadership subversion. Today, we set that yoke down and look to our roots to find a way forward. To help us navigate this journey, we are deeply honored to have a woman who embodies the spirit of leadership and scholarship. Joining us is Assistant Professor Maria Aurora Teresita Tabada, Ma'am Tess, as we call her, is the head of the Institute of Strategic Research and Development Studies at the Visayas State University. As a seasoned sociologist and gender and development coordinator at VSU, she has spent her career at the intersection of social justice and community empowerment. She is recognized as an expert in climate and disaster resilience and notably a global voice in extractives transparency, having represented the country in international dialogues on resource justice. Mom Tess, good morning. Welcome to the Common Dream. It is a privilege to have your wisdom on this maiden voyage. Ma'am, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Chad. It's also an honor to be here on your maiden podcast.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Yes, I'm very curious. You're in the academe. You go almost get involved all over research, facilitation, community work. And to top that, aside from teaching and extension and community service, you are a mother and a grandmother. You have a good number of children you've raised, and some of them
Thanks.
six, yes. And some of them are, I mean, almost all of them are now professionals. Just a few in school. How does that, what formula did you have? I mean, have you have any formula for our women who's also doing the same, particularly because of the economic context where women also had to change roles over the years? What was the magic formula for you to be able to effectively do all of these roles and having to change as if automatically from one role to another?
Actually, Chad, there's no magic formula. When I look back, um, well, partly trial and error, but really, I think before I graduated, I did an 8-day retreat. So, and during that retreat, it was very clear what God wanted me to do. To teach. That's one. So that's why I came to the university with that, and at the same time teaching not just my students, but I guess trying to pass on my faith and an appreciation of being able to do what I can for wherever I am placed. So I try to pass that on to my children, and I guess that's the challenge now with so many things that compete for their attention. Sometimes I wonder if they still are able to hear, mine and my husband's voice telling them, this is what we do. But so far, I think we have managed. God has been good and allowing my children at least to be sensitive to what is happening, discussions about, the war, etc. So
Wow.
yeah, I've been blessed.
So your home is a home for discussion. And that's, I think, one of the things you're saying is important to keep grounded, look at direction, even when roles change so rapidly. I'm very curious about that point. If ma'am, that the intersectionality of our human pursuits with some of the things that we believe in, faith, God, some people may not call it God, which is very related to this segment. We are trying to present the icon of the Babaylan as the lost icon of womanhood that embodies a Filipina. And as many as her roles are during the pre-colonial period, she is really at the center, someone who can divine the will of the gods. And this is important, I think, part of that icon, because as you said, this has helped you get anchored as you shift through so many roles at the same time. You have somewhere to go to that is really rooted in the possibility of mystery, interacting with human realities. And this is, I think, supposed to be the icon of a woman that we have not appreciated for a long time. Someone who can understand the mysteries of the future, not totally, but at least appreciate the inklings of that mystery and applying that to her role in society, in the family, wherever she is applied in. But that image, Ma'am Tess, has been, well, pillaged, defaced, broken down, erased even, as the colonial powers came to visit. And I suppose this is for debate, but we can all say at the very least, the only reason they came here is for our resources. And these are the very things that well, they say the cross is important, the gospel is, I'm Catholic, I understand that. That's part of the shifts in our acknowledgement of the divine. But if you're going to look at the history, at least at the later part of it, the idea of defacing the woman who at least at that point stands at the gateway of, political life, society, and power, the divine power to uh, draw grace or even withhold it at some point had to be eradicated for the colonial agenda to be effective in our Philippine setting. And that's been broken down. Um, let's discuss about that in depth. What do you think were the importance of such deconstruction of the Philippine Babaylan during that time, and what are the impacts of such deconstruction as you see in your work, advancing gender and development in politics, natural resource governance, and even in the academia. What deconstructing her, the Babaylan, has impacted women today? What are the few um, uh, 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 ways that it has expressed itself into Philippine womanhood at this point in time?
Yeah. I think for many of us, I come from a generation that I think Renato Constantino would call miseducated. Uh, so I guess until I went to the Ateneo and discovered, these things, um, it wasn't part of the consciousness. And I guess the idea of, women getting an education, yes, but after that, you go home, you stay home, take care of your children, etc. And that it had to be, you had to make a difficult choice between working and taking care of your children, because if you didn't do that, no, you're not a good mother. No, if you opt to work outside the house. So I guess when it's just now that I realize, when looking at the Babaylan, what a role model, no, a role model for us, in the sense that she was really looked up, no, in the pre-Hispanic Philippines. She was a spiritual leader. The rituals will not happen without her. And then also the capacity to heal, no, healing. So all these traditional use of herbs and medical medicines from plants, herbal medicine, sorry. That one. And then of course, she was a guide to the community, yung mga oral traditions that needed to be preserved. She was at the start, at least. And then of course, they were, because of their these things that they were able to do, they had power. And it was acknowledged in the community. So women, it was not an afterthought, but really at the center, and being influencing all that was happening. So I think that's the part that we need to rediscover, especially for our young ones, to discover that this you can do all these things, and still be able to care for your family, care for your community. It's not how to embed, how to integrate this so that the person is whole.
Mm.
No, not confused about what to do or not. I think that's the part for the younger ones na to be able to realize that these are not, this, although they look different aspects, but when you reflect on it really, it's a decision you make that you would want to influence, you'd want to contribute, and therefore these are the things that you should be doing. That kind of mindset, that kind of perspective. And I guess if we look at, for example, the capacity to heal, and when you look at it, you use, for example, your um, herbal herbs, not that you use. So that means we need the earth to be able to produce these things. So we go back to laudato si in our terms now, no, to take care, to be stewards, good stewards of the resources that have been given to us. So it's actually, it takes time. It takes time to be able to see the connections. But I think if we continue to reflect on what we are doing, how we are doing it, then we begin to see the intersections, and we begin to see the possibilities actually. So,
Yeah. But uh, the point being taken is that the person, the woman, provided that there are so many things expected of her or assigned to her, uh, person by society, by her family, by our, colonial mentality. The important discovery for any person, especially a woman at that, is really to find those pieces together and put them back integrally as one person. She's not this or that, but she's an entire person altogether, which is also a very, coming from a Judeo-Christian understanding of God, I guess. The word shalom, actually, in Hebrew, I was told by my teachers before, was really not simply peace, but really the act of gathering together. If you break something and it's shattered into pieces, you take all of those pieces together and bring them together, piece them together until they become whole again, or at least
wholeness.
whatever semblance of a whole that is. And that's supposed to be what shalom means. It's not wishing somebody peace, but it's really bringing together the aspect of confusion, of hurts, of brokenness. And I think that's a project, very long project, started especially for women. Um, in the current conversations, there are even political nuances, or even actual verbal pronouncements of leaders objectifying women, making her lose other parts of herself. I think it's also important to remind the young people, especially women, that their worth doesn't really come from other people assigning that kind of worth to them. But yes, you said the Babaylan really exemplifies the integrity of that woman, all roles together being pressed into herself, but because she chose it, it's not assigned to her, it's her power. That's how powerful she is. Thank you for that perspective, Mom Tess. Let's discuss a few methodical, systematic way, certain tools where the colonial rule has degraded, um, even defiled, obliterated that image of the Babaylan, and how these tools are still being used by a patriarchal system, uh, imposing it on women. If so, your work in the academe, even in society, even in communities that you work with, what are the telltale tools used by a patriarchal system to make sure that women stay put in their place and not um, uh, what do you call this one? Not gather together the pieces that makes her integral.
Um, I think one of the really powerful, even until now, is really the religion.
Ah,
How religion can be used to um, explain why women should be in just in this position and not cross the line and take over men, no, that kind of mindset. So the part of it is the doctrine, but I think part of the problem in our case is really how we were taught, how we were catechized. So although there are still issues there because we don't really you have recently all these appointments at the Vatican for women, but we would want to see more greater participation, I guess. And here in the country, that is we still have to struggle it, but it's difficult. It's not easy. It's easy to say, but even within myself, how do you deal with this really? Because if you say that women should be priests, 'di ba? There's something there, and I need to reflect on it. I really need to seriously think about it. I mean, I don't want to close myself because I also think that perhaps God is talking in this way. I don't know. So the openness, I think it's important, and that's why the realization that our religion, is being used, to define how women should be. I think that should be clear. So where it is, and then also um, at the time of the Babaylans, they were demonized, and they really the priests wanted them, the friars wanted them really literally out, of the picture. So I guess it's not that way as you anymore, but there are some who still think that women should stay home and should, and that the role you play in the church, for example, is women of Jerusalem. You na you cook during Holy Week and all these, those kinds of things. I mean, that's well and good. If I think there's some women who really enjoy that and who find fulfillment in that. And I think that should be, they should be supported. They should be given the consideration there. But there are also women who are not comfortable. And so you allow for space. I think that's important. Space for us to be able to respond according to our capacities, according to our beliefs, etc. The other one also, I think, is although with the Magna Carta of women, we have already some changes. Um, I think it's also the law. There is the law, but how is it really being implemented? About the actual implementation, does it really give the space that women need to be able to do something? And even the realization that because there's still dependency in many cases, especially in the poorer communities, um, some women can work, they can provide, but some really have to take care of their children. And so if they're in a relationship that that tantamounts to vow,
right.
then you have, and usually the case is that even if they file a case, the following week, then take it back because the concern really is, where do I get the support that my children needs if I leave my husband? So that, no, the legal concerns there, and then also certain, well, restrictions, and we've seen how, how men think of women in the highest uh what do you call this
Or that Congress.
part, yeah, in Congress. So it's really sad no? It's really sad. But so all the more reason, especially for us in the academe, to really, educate our students. Now that's not acceptable. Even just, the fact that the lawmaker thought it would be okay to verbalize that, that idea, that in itself is already problematic. So we really want our students to understand that,
Right.
and really stand up for the rights, and both, not just the women, but even our male students. I would want them to, support the women, be able to do, their share, not just being silent, but really, coming out and saying we support women, we don't agree with, sexual harassment and things
And
like
create
that.
spaces where they are.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. And then the other tools like our conception, no, our the concept of Maria Clara. Kasi for a long time, even me,
Yeah.
I grew up with that notion, no, women, girls are supposed to, be mahinhin. You don't, act first and stuff like that. So, but and and it's a little, no, it's still slowly changing. Ako, I find myself in class. I remember I had a student who came to class in plunging, plunging, and so of course I was taken aback, no. But I said, I mean, that is you. You're entitled to that. But I hope you can consider also, no, the appropriateness of the attire in the classroom. I couldn't help myself. But really, I think we also really need to, debunk the notion that, it's okay to depend, it's okay. When in fact we should be telling our students, no, that, empowerment is really the goal.
Right.
You get an education so that you become empowered and you can create a future for yourself.
Yeah.
That's why I make efforts to talk to them about early pregnancy, teenage pregnancy, because that's really a problem.
Anything that gives the woman agency over her own body, whether she whether the outcome would be something we do not wish would be the
Yeah,
outcome, but at least she knows that this is what I do with my body and I'm responsible for it. No
yeah,
society and no man should have a say on what she's going to, you know. And that's at one point he said religion emphasizes that women should be pure, women should be
mm,
subversive. The icon even of Mary, the mother of Jesus, the silent woman, when in fact the only speech, the longest speech she had in the Bible was a very revolutionary speech.
yeah,
And she was telling people to revolt against the system that makes the poor subject to the rich, and where the powerful needs to be taken down from where they are sitting so that the poor can sit in their places. And we even that simple theological nuance of a revolution, the claim of Mary that God should be involved in these things had been reassigned to something prayerful, cute, very very what do you call subservient, when in fact it was really a conversation between two equals. I mean, I suppose that's how you're going to look at it, a Babaylan style, but that's lost in how that's being interpreted. But again, Ma'am Tess, that's what we would want to look at, that empowerment does not really mean what do you call this one? I have the power and I am going to give it to you as a
yeah,
loan or as
yeah.
a,
That's not what we want.
but
We
instead
want
this is really where
to discover. Yeah,
I have power, therefore I can make decisions for myself, and you really don't have any say anymore, unless I have encroached into other people's rights. But having to dress this way shouldn't be a limitation, shouldn't be used to, make you a less of a woman than what has been ideal. Yeah. Thank you so much for that perspective, Ma'am Tessa. So we're looking at so in the years of teaching gender and how that plays into development, do you see, certain glimmers of hope, or is it even, a big space for hope where the present society would eventually break down the patriarchy and the colonial, neo-colonial systems that make women second class, let's say, in society and at work, for that matter, in the market, for that matter.
I think we still have a long way to go. Although there have been improvements, I think with the Magna Carta of Women, which is very clear what the legal basis are and options that are available for women. But I guess how many really know what's in the Magna Carta? No, especially if you go down to rural communities. So it still you need to educate our population, especially for me, for our students, really educate our students so that they can discover for themselves what is there. And then I guess also um I think because we have handled gender and development of the university for a long time. um I even now, after what, um PCW will be 50 years already next year or the year after, no? Um, but you still, or maybe you still see that, there's a lot of things that need really to be done. It's not just personal, it's structural.
Yeah.
So there are structural changes that still need to be done. Like even for example, sa SUCs, there's a you need there needs to be more buy-in
Mhm.
from the heads, of the state universities and colleges, so that you can really do gender mainstreaming down to the um at the university level. So the understanding of what it entails, that's the part that's missing, I think. So there are a few who really, work, wo- um try to really imagine what needs to be done. But if you do not have enough support, you don't have adequate support, especially at the top, it's difficult. No, it's a
Yes.
lonely and difficult uh, uh, experience. No, yeah,
In
and then
fact,
plus the issue of gender-based sexual harassment. That's very real. So
yeah.
it adds to the difficulty actually.
In fact, thanks for pointing that out, ma'am. I remember now. In fact, there was an observation that rape and gender violence related cases have been on the rise, at least for the past 10 years or so. But that does not really necessarily mean that there are more cases than there were 10 years ago.
Before,
Maybe
yeah,
because there's already more access to justice. There is a reporting mechanism, and women
yeah,
are aware of the things that happen. That being said, I think even these cases are still the tip of the iceberg. So many things I can imagine are happening in households right now, particularly compound to that the poverty of certain sectors of community, the lack of capacity to be even uh, act out how a human person should be in the way a person behaves, eats, dress, and I suppose that also has a bearing to one's own identity. And if you live in a pigsty, I think you would probably behave in such a way that would challenge society's own value or disvalue, lack of appreciation of who you are. And I've had uh, a few cases before when I was in a religious congregation. I was a novice, I think, then when we were assigned in a community, and there is this community where people live right next to the slums, and they have one of the families that I what do you call this one, monitor, I mean at least engage every Sunday, is a family of garbage pickers. And she has it's a big family and a very small household. And you would it's even a, you know, a wonder of physics how you can fit 18 people in that very small house. But
Yes.
and and then one day I noticed that a 14-year-old daughter was not there anymore. And I will ask the question. And it's a very simple answer the mother had. Well, she went to her, boyfriend. He's a married man, a security guard, so has a job, more or less. And then I said, and you allowed her to go at 14? She said, yeah, that's one mouth less to feed.
Yeah.
And so it's
That's
but they wouldn't do that to their male children. Only female
yeah.
subjected to such assessment of value in society. And that's very sad. I think that's one of the things that really made me realize, oh, women really have. Well, I come from a family where women are very strong, so I have the different appreciation. But then
Yes.
I realized that there is really a very vast part of society that this is how we value women. We remember that incident in Congress, a very matter of factly way
Yeah.
of saying that, well, she dresses that way, so she affects my my demeanor, my disposition. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, come on. And then you have, I'm sorry, but this is already into that because we're going into politics, Ma'am Tess. And these are structures built. You said that there is a long way to go for women to reach that empowerment after so many things that women then have done in society. I think there's one friend I have. She's really a very brilliant woman, Montes. But then she's now nothing wrong with being a full-time mother, and that's also her choice. But when she laments about the so many things she has given up to her dreams when she was young. And she was telling me that in this society, no matter how good you are, even if you're better than your male counterparts in the workplace, women had to exert twice the effort just to be noticed. And that's I don't know generally how that speaks, but there are so many indicators about the preference of certain gender in the workplace, stereotyping even in politics, and all of that, which leads to a study, a very recent one. I've come across it from UN Women, and it talks about the involvement of women in politics. For some time, we look at women in politics as if they are a novelty and at some point even a caricature of something else. But we look at men, they open their mouths, even if that does not. I mean, I'm not generally saying, because there are men in politics I admire. But if you're going to put a bar somewhere between a woman speaking sense and a man speaking nonsense, there would probably more applause given to that kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
and there are even some women politicians we know who had to act like men, masculinize themselves in order to garner that applause. And that's very obvious in our society. Now, this study by the UN Women on politics says women, well, wow. Yeah, women can file candidacy. That's across the board, all over each country. That is they're right, they can do that. But when it comes to introducing their platform, women are most often than not consigned to particular stereotypes and the platform they present. And this,
Social concerns,
yes, social concerns. So if there's probably
women.
yeah, there's probably a man there and a woman there. The questions asked about to men would probably be about the law, peace
Yeah.
and order, war
Yeah.
and conflict, economics,
Infrastructure.
structure. But when there's a woman, even if she's an economist, an engineer, a doctor, what would normally navigate would be, well, how are you as a mother? What do you think would be a program for women to is Zumba a good program for Women's Month? And these are really wow.
Yeah.
I can't. It's telltale. And This is clearly a very essential symptom of that deterioration of the image of the woman from our pre-colonial history to where the patriarchy has damaged her severely. Um, what do you think are key points that would allow us to at least try um, to change the system?
I guess, like, I think all the other things that need to be done, education is basic.
Right.
Even in, I've been doing voters education for for a long, long time, and I get to hear, I'm being told, why do you go into that? You cannot expect any change to happen. And then I guess I say that um, it may not happen in my lifetime, but at least we're starting something. And I think it really lets you, I mean, it teaches you to, to look at it from the long term, the longer span of time, knowing that there is something that you are doing, but of course there's no guarantee that you will be able to see the fruits of your labor. But I think that if we of then we that's where, if we have faith and we believe that we are doing God's work, whatever you conceive God to be, but you're doing what you're supposed to do, doing the right thing and doing it right. I think it really matters, especially I think, especially in the political arena nowadays. There are exceptional women leaders, and um and I really appreciate the women leaders who are able to retain their being, feminine, no caring, and uh what do you call this, compassionate,
Nurturing.
no, that, yeah, nurturing, that, yeah. So that kind, I appreciate that, although I appreciate the women who are, really speak up. But sometimes you have, I draw the line when, I say to myself, I wouldn't want to be like that, no, even if I even if I'm able to do things, because I mean, you do it that way. So yun, and I think we have to, and a part of the education is to make people realize that the world is made, if women are not, brought into the fore, then you lose a lot of things like vision. Women see things differently, men see things differently. So if half of the world is, carried by women, then why don't you have them in the table? Why don't you get them to, explain and do the things that they would best do if they were part of the process? And then I guess also, of course, if you're part of the process, then you can also be part of the solution. So, and we see how the solution is, if it's only men, no? I mean, the war that we're seeing now, who are the who were the people who discussed that? Siguro maybe if there was a woman, not at the forefront, no? It was all men, I guess, primarily men. So
Uh,
if it's, and then in our peace process, we see how the women,
yeah.
no, the chair was a woman. So
Yeah.
you see how it's handled differently. I'm not saying that, men cannot do that, but the thing is, I cannot, I mean, in the 21st century, how come we cannot, have space for everybody? And not just the women, for everybody who would want to be part of that process. I think that's where, and in the Philippines, gaya gaya, no, we look up to America and stuff like that. And I I'm the only one here in the Philippines, so I I tell my siblings, no, we wouldn't want. I'm sure I don't want to be where America is now and have it here, transplanted here. But we have to say something. We have to do something. Otherwise, that's the role model. Also, we need to have a different role model.
And sometimes these models have to be women themselves stepping
Yeah,
up. Because right now the narrative is like controlled by men. Like out of a tantrum, you would bomb an entire country which has a developing peace process that's working, and then suddenly you're the next thing you know is that, well, we just realized we have to release the bomb over some flimsy excuse of security, which nobody even agreed to be the case.
that's why. That's
Um,
why.
Other implications. That's yeah. So if women remain as Babaylan, at least that image, feminine, nurturing, but at the same time firm and
Strong.
sensible, relevant, then I suppose so much of this violence would probably have to be tempered down by another process, which could be more compassionate. Um, so in many of the literature that we have, I think most of the literature pertaining to the environment, nature, would always personify her as a woman. And I that's probably because it's obvious nature generates, it provides, it produces, it gives, and these are feminine qualities. And these are also, but she can be angry. Nature can be angry. She can change mountains.
Nature is always angry now.
Nature is always angry, which is the point of this uh, last portion of the conversation on this. You've been in, I mean, for some time when the Philippines decided there's extractive transparency, you were
Oh,
there, you were part of the first group of women. I think that group is almost all women. Um, at some point, a very few men there. And then they decided about, so that's, when was that? 2012 was the EO, then definitely in
yeah,
2013.
2013. I was at the um what you call this? At the global conference in
Right.
Sydney when the Philippines was accepted as a candidate country
So
in the
that's more
AICTI.
than, that's like what, 13 years ago. Wow.
Yes, 13 years.
So if you count 2012, that's like 14 years ago. That's more than a decade. That's a child's, that's somebody's 40, teenage.
Teenage, teenager already.
And yet the conversation on gender wasn't really an original conversation then.
Yes, yes.
These were just commodity economics, taxes, revenue, and later on when
Number of female laborers.
is
Yeah, it was just that at the start.
um this is a flow into, well, if the Babaylan represents the divine, and during that time the divine has attributes of nature, lightning, water, the sun, the moon, fields, etc. These are the gods she talks to all the time. It's basically nature, and she represents nature at that time. Um, and so I also remember that my great grandmother, not my great grandfather, was the one who manages our farm. And she's there all the time. She looks at the season, she looks at the sky. She's very sensitive about these things. Um, though I don't know if that's necessarily because she's quite a very different woman from her age. Most probably, I know most owners are men that time, but she was really, and she creates a community of women in her farm. Actually, that's one of the first realizations I have of women doing farming work yeah. So that being said, Maltese, we are entering into well, some scientists would have called it, there are papers published about it, another extinction level event because of the fast rate with which biodiversity had been lost annually. So we may have little gains in some, but some underreported and are followed by scientists had been alarmingly decreasing to the point of extinction. And we know basically in our ecology that an ecosystem is a web of life. What happens to a particular web is actually felt in the others. I'm not sure why human beings do not feel that reverberation of the web, because it's supposed to be very, something if we're connected to that. Um, Mananjin, even in our conversations, would insist that there is really that kind of connection where the IPs, our indigenous brothers and sisters, feel as if it's a second nature to them to feel how the earth changes. But that's something lost to modern man. And modern man, male, the male person, is really very keen at producing intensively gadgets, things like that. Oh, I know women would want some gadgets, but it's really men who I see would um, uh, buy big cars, infrastructures among that, at least stereotypically, and in many cases that we see in society right now. But there are also women who, sadly, had felt very less connection to the roots of nature, of our being, grounded on the earth. I think it's a 20-year-old document, Ma'am Tess. One of the few things that opened my eyes to the plight of human rights was not really about, we know we read about martial law and things like that, but the one that deeply struck me was not because of, well, it's a human rights retreat conducted, I think, by Bishop Labayan that time.
Mm. Yes.
And it was by a community of human rights practitioners, I think 2 decades ago. Sister Cres Lucero of the Task
Mm.
Force of the
Yeah.
Philippines was still alive that time. And they gathered together to realize what would be the psychosocial, spiritual, uh, uh, what do you call this one? Trade-off because of human rights violations. And this one became, the documentation of this exercise actually became a book. And the book that documents the retreat was entitled Not to Hurt the Womb That Gave Birth. And that was, of all the realizations of the statistics that I have read about human rights, this very simple title actually struck me. And from that point on, oriented my, advocacy to human rights. Because here, really, we talk about human life, the series of rights that we have and we still fight for, but without the earth, the very structure that we stand on and gives us nourishment, then what are we talking? I mean, what will we be talking for 10 years from now? And this is really a conversation that centers around those that had been excluded, basically by development decisions, political decisions had been used, recycled, just to, render legitimacy to a structure that's really always patriarchal and violent at some point. Um, and so, in relation to that, would you say that the disconnection we have to that very image of the Babaylan has given modern man an opportunity to commoditize the earth rather than personify her?
Yeah. I ever since I think when I started out 2010,
Yeah.
actually the experience was really with with a community that had that was being um mining was going to happen in the community. And I remember the parish priest called, our office, and I happened to answer the phone, and so he was asking, can the university send a team to discuss the impacts of mining? He was inviting the company to do also a presentation. So I thought it was a very good idea, not to have both, allow space for everybody. So I was part of the team. We explained. We had somebody who did biology, and then also somebody well, the social, which is mine, um, and then the economic part. So we were able to explain. So the idea was that for the community, he invited actually the leaders in the chapels, no. So for them to make to hear, and then for them to pass it on to their own parishioners in the chapels. So I think um I it starts there, not I guess the church has a lot to say about, you know, our responsibility to ensure that, we take proper care of the earth. And like for us here in Region 8, I mean, we experience Yolanda, so we know that things are not the same anymore, and that if we do not do anything,
Yeah.
these things are likely going to happen again. And it happened last year, no? We were a direct hit for Tino. And, these kinds of, and so you realize that these things are happening partly because we have not learned. We have not learned, no? So going back to the image of the Babaylan, where, the learning, the local knowledge is kept, and really not just kept, but really passed on, so that the tribe can really i- um can learn and can benefit from whatever these take. So I think that's one really in the discussion of the environment. The second thing is, I think we really need to draw the line with mining. Unfortunately, in the Philippines, we have not really been able to come up with uh, you know, demanding, really truly demanding, and taking to account mining companies who are not following the rules. I mean, you need mining can be there, but really we need to make sure that they do follow the rules. Unfortunately, it's more of not following rather than following,
Maybe it's
and the
because
state.
the bar is so low for
Yeah, that's
we
another point.
really need to like, put the bar.
That's true. And I know I'm in the EITI, so I say it with a lot of, concern. No, it's not just for just telling, getting at the mining companies. That's not the point. The point is we cannot make changes, we cannot have improvements if we do not lay it out and say what exactly is the problem. Diba? You cannot solve it if you do not say what the problem is. So for now, really, we have to acknowledge and really do something about getting them to follow follow the rules, and of course changing the existing framework, because the framework really is skewed towards extraction to the max, not considering,
Still a colonial structure. Uh,
yeah,
yeah.
not considering that things have changed, have climate change, extractivism. So you have to factor this in. So until such time we have leaders who will be able to think through, and at the community level, you have the women. Many of our communities are really women coming out in the open. I think you've been to our the EITI conferences. It's usually the women who speak up and share their experiences on the ground. So unless we have those, and it's really a change, mindset, perspective. If we want, as you said, it's extinction level event. So unless we realize that, and really see that we need to make some changes. Of course, if we go to, if we end up extinct, at least we don't end up extinct because we didn't do anything, no? But because it was time, the earth said, sobra na ang abuso. So it has to end somewhere. So
At
I those are, yeah.
at some points, the earth has to rest, um,
Yeah.
which is really very what do you call this one? If we draw our pattern from the universe, it means that there's always a cycle of generation and degeneration and
Yeah.
regeneration. That's really how life works. And yet, this cycle had been induced, at least the degenerative part of all of this had been induced primarily because of human activity, um, which goes to say that while we came from that womb, we're hurting that womb that gave us birth. Um, quite, you know, I even wonder what would our children born at least in this year have would have to live on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's true. Yeah.
I would, I would always, they would say, are you even Catholic to discourage marriage? I said, no, marriage is okay, but I mean, it's my opinion, Ma'am Tessa. It's not a theological discussion. I was even telling them that, consider that if you're going to raise a family with your income, the way things are, the compounding socioeconomic risks of having a child, add to that disasters were that had grown so exponentially in impact year on year, and at the same time the dwindling resources. Now the inventory of water had been
Yes.
studied to have gone severely low, and with all of these, plus that there
Especially
are
in
big
Cebu.
big corporations that are already putting stake and claim to that resources. How much more for the poor, the most, the many of us who are at some point really powerless to put that stake. Because I see, if we're looking at big corporations as an economic input, uh, in offering our resources for cash, basically. Um, the poor also had a stake for these resources because that's where they uh, used to live on to survive. It's really for survival. And that kind of decision had to be taken into consideration, particularly now where the resources are dwindling. So right now, what you give to corporations, very big corporations, and this is a very colonial structure, really, is
Yes.
withholding the basic needs for many of the
Yeah.
Filipinos. And that's particularly worrisome, really. And the mining moratorium had been lifted even without a definitive work of a body of work that tells us where to mine, blah blah blah,
Yeah.
which was supposed to be the purpose of that moratorium in the first place, to give us a policy look, at least an assessment on the prevailing policy and give a recommendation on how not to do business as usual. Unfortunately, that had been lifted in 2019. Now it's business as usual. They're selling come you know,
Yeah. I don't know if you've heard of what has been going on in MacArthur lately. I mean, can you imagine having a 4 feet, four-story building, this boat, this dredger, like a 4-story building, being able to get
no,
inside, cross the rice fields.
yes,
You can, I mean, I cannot imagine how it happened without, people seeing that this was going on. And, local government says, we were not aware.
come
I
on.
mean,
You know,
well,
I'm sorry if
it's really,
it comes out like that, but yeah, it's really unbelievable. If they don't know, who would know? I mean,
yeah,
so that's
that's true. And how do you make people aware? My concern now is you have this actual event happening in areas that are supposed to be provision food security, rice, no, and that's very important for us. So how do we make people aware, that this is going on, that it's not something in the movies,
yeah,
but reality, and therefore they should be concerned because they might be next in line.
yes,
No, these things happening, maybe not that dredger, But definitely you have deep sea mining, no,
Right.
you have opened all these things. I mean, how do we really educate people? How do we tell them that there's this danger, and it's going to get worse because we don't care.
Yeah. And visually, Ma'am Tess, no, that's my appreciation of that image of a dredger into a rice fields would probably be the messaging that, well, it's okay.
Yeah,
Food
yeah.
security is not a priority. Cash is. I mean, I mean, if
And these are not Filipinos, huh?
yeah.
This they're Chinese there. So you can imagine, yeah, it's really something that you know you really I wonder, where are our values, where are the things that matter to us as
And
a people.
the globalization of indifference. Who said that? The yeah,
um,
the globalization of indifference.
I mean,
Uh, isn't it I don't know, Pope Francis? It's just probably him.
yeah,
But it was, yeah, it was or John Paul II. Anyway, it's something like that. And it has now a, big countries behave like big corporations. What big corporations behave in our, local communities. I'm not saying they mean bad, but we judge the outcome necessarily,
yes.
not the end. And that's one part of looking at the ethics of the whole thing. Yes, Ma'am Tess. Thank you so much for this insight. Food security, we've covered that, but that's also something uh, quite alarming. When in fact, before, I don't know if we have, if we have young people can still remember it, but during harvest time and planting time, there are rituals performed by women farmers, even here in town
Mhm.
before, to offer certain whoever it should be God, but I believe it's not really that. It's the spirits of nature that we're thinking about. Someone who would to prevent some nature spirits the from destroying the crops, making sure that the rats would not come. These are rituals for food security, and these are things that uh, is in the core of social transaction at that time. But now we can put dredger into our rice fields. When in fact this was, even in the Cordilleras, where rice also grows, and it's a very important commodity historically and culturally. Rice actually determines the behavior of peace building, social cohesion, family ties, and even heritage. And yet, right now, rice has been so expensive, particularly
Yeah,
and there's been no, if there is, then at least it's a trickle down um, intervention, because right now even local markets are suffering from what might be an artificial scarcity of rice, or if it is scarce really, but then why would this I heard that there was some time na the mais that we eat here would cost as much as 80 pesos per kilo, because of hoarding. I suppose, I'm not sure, but that's how they perceive it to be. um, so, Ma'am Tess, to end, let's have a lightning round. I'm going to ask you um,
yeah.
words to associate with. And I'd like to, what do you call this one? Ask you about these few words. Define the modern Babaylan in a few words.
Actually, when I read this, the first thing that came to my mind was Lenny Robredo.
Ah,
Yeah, the first thing that came to my mind. Really, so I was thinking, should I say it? But that was the first thing that came to my
I
mind.
can
So,
imagine the comments.
yeah. Well, that's their problem, but I'm being honest.
We've dealt with it a few times, but yeah, why not? What is the single biggest lie the patriarchy ever told us?
That only men matter.
Ah, yeah, yes. If you could restore one pre-colonial law today, what would it be?
Well, allowing women to be at the forefront of community life, making decisions.
Makatarungan, makatao, makakalikasan. Which one do we need to solve first?
I think the makatao,
Yeah,
we have to go back to our humanity, our basic humanity, to be able to see also the humanity of the persons that we do not like. That kind. Yeah.
right now, everybody is another person, not part of that, which is not a Filipino philosophy, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. It's,
There's
yes, ma'am.
related to that. I heard the interview of Alex Ayala, and
Mm,
it's what struck me there was when she said that, iba tayo, when we come together, there's a sense of community that you can really feel. So that's why she makes all these efforts and to speak in Tagalog. But I think that's it, actually. Not that there's that sense, and it's really unfortunate if we lose it
yeah,
because we want to adapt the West. We want to be modern.
yeah.
No?
There is no another in the Filipino philosophy. I mean, the other person is actually connected to the us.
Yeah, your neighbor.
Very fluid, yes.
Yeah,
So in our, yeah, that's, well, anyway, somebody else discussed it more elaborately than me. Extractive mining or sustainable farming, which is the bigger test of our moral backbone right now?
I think it's extractive mining because we've not been able to really, you know, uh, get them to do the things that they should be doing to help protect the environment. Not
Sometimes
just,
we just presume that there is an ethical way of doing it, but we never talked about it. Define what ethics is in this area. Um,
for mining.
Practices.
I think the mining company should realize that the resources are finite, that it was intended for everybody, not just for the greed of the mining company, and therefore they should the kind of mining that they do should allow also people to survive, communities to survive, not just them, getting from whatever they are extracting.
Well said. That's good. Um, Arundhati Roy or a modern Filipina activist who is your common dream? Well, Arundhati Roy was the latest reading I have, so she comes to mind.
Yeah.
But which modern Filipina activist would you modern, they say, Filipina
Um,
would come to mind to your mind if we talk about Babaylan, someone who
it's
represents
still Lenny Robredo.
your bread. You really,
Yeah.
you
No, because
really,
it's really more of I'm really amazed at what she has been able to do in Naga.
yeah.
You
Or
know, I
well,
mean,
anyway, yeah.
on her own initiatives, and really using technology to be able to jumpstart the
This is
progress.
really a very good exploration later on for whatever academic scholarly study, even in the field of psychology and sociology.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
why
yeah,
would a woman who is feminine but effective have to suffer this particular ecosystem of violence, distrust, compared to a woman who is masculine? This
yeah,
is really, yeah. I mean, it's thought-provoking for me because the Babaylan wasn't really a man; she's really a woman
yeah.
dressed
And if you were a man who was babaylan, you
as a
had to behave as a woman.
Definitely. So it's like now, if there's a woman who's effective, and the claim here, at least according to you, is that Lenny Robredo embodies such archetype. Her popularity isn't really as well. She amassed 15 million in votes, but that's not enough to make her win. Majority of the people still would want to confine the image of a woman that would behave like a man, and even without, other additional requirement, or additional competency, just behave like a man,
Yeah.
talk like a man.
It just crossed my mind, why am I'm analyzing why I'm responding to you very specific. I
Mhm.
guess a part of me is really looking for heroes.
Yeah.
No, even at my age and the things that I've been through, I think one of the things that we're missing actually the Philippines now is to have somebody to look up to, somebody who can, you know, we can we can follow or at least guide us and let us know that we're on the right track. I think that's part of it, really, that kind of need, because we've been, our presidents, except siguro for Pinoy, us, have really been essentially, themselves, just thinking of themselves. So we need somebody who thinks of others, and really you can really see in the actions that they are thinking about others. They want others to, progress, to develop.
Yeah. Yeah. To li- live and let live. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is the one colonial yoke every Filipina should cast off this International Women's Month? At least
Ah,
begin practicing.
that
Starting it.
um that white is beautiful.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, because many of the young,
Glutathione.
yeah, it freaks me
Investment.
out. It freaks me out, really. I mean, the foreigners are dying to have a tan of our skin, and we are, nagkandarapa to have glutathione, etc.
There's a there's a novel, a work by the novelist who was this Toni Morrison, and the
Ah,
title
yeah.
and the title of the book was The Bluest Eye. It's really about that particular image, a black girl asking her, "Would I be beautiful if I have blue eyes?" So I mean, it's written about woman, a marginalized woman, a woman marginalized as she is already, but a black woman at that. That made me realize that, yeah, there's really so many investment women have just to conform to standards that are not even realistic. So yeah, so the earth. Is she our mother to be served or our partner to be respected?
I think both. Because I realize that, the things that we have comes from the earth, the food, the water, no, comes from the earth. But at the same time, to ensure that it continues to give us those things, we need to partner. We need to make sure that we take care of the earth.
Yeah. One thing you'd say to a woman running for office who is being told she's too emotional to lead.
One thing I would tell, just be yourself. You believe that you are in the right, you are in the place where you are meant to be.
Describe the Philippines in 2040. The
I had
2040
a difficult time. I had a difficult time.
difficult.
Um,
So the
well,
ideas presented in the ano yun? The Philippine
yeah, 2040.
uh, ambition.
Matatag. I
Uh,
think in line with the advocacy, really want to see a more gender equal, gender fair society, and a society um, that's compassionate, really. I mean, that we care for one another, and then also that we care for the earth. Because otherwise, if we don't meet the 2030 SDGs, where would we be? Part
correct.
of that is, SG13 climate action. I
Mhm.
mean, the realization that there's actually a limit, no? There's a time bomb that's ticking, And we tend to forget that that is what is happening.
Uh,
So,
the development of the SDGs, first it was the MDGs and
yeah.
it did not really meet the.
That's why. So I'm not sure we'll meet the 2030 because I was looking at the I think Asia Pacific report, and they were saying that we were doing something, but we're not on the right track. It's going down instead of improving. So it's really sad. And this is Asia Pacific. So
And I think the way they're going about this is more perfunctory and compliance
yeah, that's the problem. If
rather
people, yeah,
for the
not
principle.
Yeah, that's true. I'm trying to find. Oh, we're also being mobilized to provide the data for that.
Yeah.
Actually, we get forms from PCW to to respond. But really seriously, I mean,
Yeah.
we take it seriously, but I don't know they up there. How serious are they?
But how can you consign a person living, thinking, feeling with her and his experience to be reduced into please fill out this form?
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
true.
yeah,
That's
you
true.
have very ambitious goals for SDGs, and they are very good goals. But yet you consign them to like, okay, how many people in a meeting, given this. So
I think maybe we just have to decide that what will matter now is what is happening on the ground.
yeah.
So where am I? Is there something that I can do? And that's what will matter. Maybe if you look at it macro, it doesn't seem to make any difference. But the fact that it will make a difference in the lives of people on a certain community, I think it has to start there for us to really realize that this is serious and we need to do something about it. We have to be able to have what do you want, showcase models to show that it works, and it will make a difference if we do it.
Yes. And then there's also the crisis of in education right now, which
Yeah.
on it.
Oh,
Um,
my son is graduating grade 12, and I really worry because we were affected by the earthquake in September, and then we had Tino, and
yeah,
then we had another. So they had to transfer to another the school, no, because they had to fix there, and so you have you stop the classes, and then you do what you call this modular, and my son was saying doesn't make
that's where, yeah,
yeah, doesn't work, was saying. And then you had Ebra, we hosted Ebra, and so we had another week of no classes. So I really wonder what's going to happen. I mean, will they be able to cope? Will they be able to really, meet the demands of college, given that, the preparation was not as good as it should be? And then also because I always say this, their batch was the batch that did not graduate elementary because of COVID.
but
Yeah, so they didn't have the experience of grad. So this is the first time actually that they are going to experience a real graduation because they entered high school online. No, those kinds of things. So this is in a sense, it's a special cohort that we really, for me, we really need to attend to, not because my son is there, but simply because what will be the future of the country if you have a population of students who were not really prepared properly, prepared or ready for life, work, and then commitment to the country.
yes, so many things to do. I mean,
Yeah.
a modern Babaylan would really need magic at some point.
Yes, that's true. Now, yeah, going back to the Babaylan, I think um I'm glad the PCW thought that this would be a good theme
Yeah.
to I think to interest our, especially the young ones, to be able to understand that this is part of our history, and really I think to get them to be interested in history, because I think our history has, I don't know how our history is being taught. I've always liked history. And I'm surprised how come, young people do not enjoy, they find it boring, they find when there's so many things about us that we need to know and we do not know.
They're probably very worried about their present and both past and future.
Yeah, I
Because
guess so.
it's not a judgment, but we were,
Yeah,
we're young, we were told to, yeah, recognize that past, then also start planning for your future. Those were
future.
things. But right
Yeah,
now,
yeah, that's true.
big waves of
Eh,
what's, and I don't know if that's really related to the existential, should I say crisis right now, related
Angst.
angst, related,
Yeah,
yeah, related to the also the inavailability of inequity of so many things. You have to fight for resources.
yeah, that's possible. That's
Would
possible.
why would we fight for more? I mean, think of a future when this is really obviously what we have right now. The only things we have to make do, or rather, why do we have to think deeply of our problem just to stare it in the face and then be sad about it?
Yeah,
Most
you wonder, what goes on the minds of these young people. And how of course in our efforts to to touch their lives, sometimes I wonder if don't they think that I'm bothering them.
yeah.
Yeah,
Could
you
especially
know.
in the phase where they really don't want to be bothered. The teens.
Yeah, that's why. So well,
Yeah. Another things to look forward to as we go on about with what we do with our community. Yesterday we had just a final thought about this, ma'am. You're going to there's an initiative with PHAITI on gender and mining. And the data I'm looking at from the very current report they have is, well, gender and employment data that's been graphed. Um, uh, it may seem still the trend that women are employed less, but this isn't just mining, this is really
yeah.
all markets at the same time if there are stereotypes as well. But mining should have been one of those things where it's still very male-centered institution. Uh, what do you think would this report at least the point of a gender reporting in PHAITI within that context?
Actually, we have although it has really been gender, the notion of gender has focused on employment, women in mining, the mining industry. But recently, last year and even in this year's work plan, we really have looked at gender not just in terms of the number of people employed, but really looking at it in terms of how do we mainstream gender in the extractives. So that is what we're trying to look at now. What are the particularly some of the tools that we need to assess, for example, whether mining projects are gender responsive, tools to assess whether where your SDMP and all these things that the law gives, are they really addressing the needs of communities and needs of
With
women and children and
building roads
vulnerable
that should be
sectors.
designed for pregnant women, for instance. That's really that's building roads, designing roads so that
Ah,
pregnant.
yeah, yeah. That's why. So we want to make sure that it's not just the allure of gray infrastructure, but really in response to certain needs of the community. So I think it starts with a change in the perspective, in the mindset. Why women should be in mining. I think that's there, and so we're slowly. I mean, you have Oceana Gold, you have women who what do you call this operate the trucks and etc. So it can be done. It has been done. So we need to be able to multiply those kinds of things, but more importantly, really to see gender as cross-cutting across all the programs. not just of EIT, PHEITI, but really of the mining communities. The gender is what they call this, an indicator to determine whether they are really doing the right things.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Tess. It should have been a long conversation, but as things as they say, good things also come to an end.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll see each other again in more extensive forums than a podcast. But this is really a very beautiful maiden voyage pilot episode of our Chat GPT. Leading like the Babaylan means recognizing that another world is also possible. As my most recent favorite female philosopher, Arundhati Roy, would remind us, another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. Thank you, Ma'am Tess, and thank you so much for joining us. This is Chad GPT, lead like the Babaylan women. Thank you.
Long ago, the Babaylan knew our power. Now we rise to heal the world in its darkest hour. They tried to break the womb, they tried to claim the land, but we hold the sacred vision in our hands. We lead with compassion for the fragile ground, where food is grown and justice can be found. We are the healers breaking the colonial yoke. We are the answer to the common dream we spoke. So rise, Filipinos, let your ancient spirit soar. This is the leadership the world is hungry for. Leadership the world is hungry